right, good people in the world of tone, we welcome you back to another episode, and I'm sorry to have missed last week with the incomparable RJM Ron Manelli.
Jehoshaphat.
His amazing products. What's that?
Ron Jehoshaphat Manelli, yes. The J is not silent.
Yeah, it's the unknown. Yeah, the J is not silent in this case. But man, what a great manufacturer. But today we want to talk about something that's sort of, I think, on the minds of every manufacturer and guitar store and retailer that's out there, which is the looming tariffs, which have been sort of teased, paused, resumed, paused. It seems like the cadence we really can't fully understand, and maybe at the moment that this podcast comes out, there will be a completely different timeline for when these tariffs may or may not go into effect. So we're just talking about it as we know it today. So keep that in mind as you're watching this. If things have changed, it seems like it's fairly fluid. But one thing that I wanted to talk about, and Grant, I think that you and I are both kind of in interesting positions on this because you're in Canada. So you are the recipient of the many goods and items from the U.S. and presumably with this increased, if we're taxing items more, it's going to make it more difficult for Canada to get it in here. Presumably we're footing the bill for things that we're getting that are coming from Canada, but also you're manufacturing products that are coming from you have stuff that's coming from the US. I don't know how that's affecting you directly as a manufacturer. I can say what's affecting or what has the probability to affect us as manufacturers is that everything, at least in the US, is concerned for guitar pedals comes from China. Almost all of the components that we talk about, those are invariably made in China. Most circuit boards, even if you're using a US company to be the sort of arbiter of the PC boards, they're generally not made here. A lot of people that are doing PC board assembly level stuff, a lot of that comes from China. Pretty much everything in the electronic space.
It's impossible to not have China influence your process.
Even if you're assembling it here, you're 100% getting it from China, or your source is getting it from China. So I think it's sort of unavoidable to think that there aren't going to be price increases for products. And, even let's just, to use round numbers, and pardon me here while I'm getting over another toddler, given that my son is in preschool.
So the reality of parenting.
Yeah.
Yes. As soon as your kid goes to preschool, you get sick.
Well,
yep.
Lots of germs.
Yep.
But I try not to think about it. I try not to think about the things that they touch.
Yep.
But with that said, let's just pretend, for example, just to use round numbers, that you have a pedal that costs $50 to manufacture right now. So that includes all the parts, the labor, the packaging, whatever it is that you need to get the product fully made and ready to ship to a customer or a dealer. Let's say it costs you $50. There's obviously, if it's made in US, there's going to be the labor, which would be unchanged, right? Because you're using your American labor, so that line item, let's say, is staying the same. But everything regarding the parts is presumably going to go up 10%. So let's say that $50, maybe the labor side, let's say, accounts to $15. That sounds kind of roughly right. And let's say that, it could be a little less than that, but I presume, let's just be conservative. Let's say it's around $15. So that means that you got $35 in parts, let's say, that likely are coming from China in some way, shape, or form. So you have an extra 10% on the $35, or I think right now it's said to be 10% on China. But I think there's already like an existing tariff. I didn't understand whether they were saying that tariff was going to be stacked So it's going to be like a 20% tariff because of that. I'm not exactly sure. But let's just go with 10% for now. So 35%. So you're talking $3.50. So the pedal is now going to cost $53.50. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but the way that usually most manufacturers are treating their costs is they say, okay, here's my cost. Now I'm going to multiply that times 4 because I need to build in my pricing for my distributors and for my retailers, and they want 30 to 50% off of the retail price. So I can't just sell it to them for $53.50. So instead of 4xing the 50 or the $50, which gives you a $200 pedal, if we have a $53.50 pedal, just doing my quick math here, and you're 4xing that, now your pedal is $214.
Yeah,
$214. So that $3.50 difference becomes a $14 difference at market, or $14 difference at market. So it goes up pretty quick. And if we're assuming that this is tacked on to the existing tariff, so it's actually a 20% tariff in China when people are already paying the 10% tariff now. Let's just say that that ends up being a full 20%. Then we're talking about a $7 difference, which means $57 times 4. Now you got a $228 pedal that was formerly $200. If the manufacturer needs to maintain the exact same margin, and I think that you're going to see this in varying degrees with a lot of different companies. And one thing that I've been looking at, and maybe we'll put it up here on screen, that I'm looking at on my phone, is that Fender, in terms of their credit rating, because they're I guess they're on the corporation is, what are they calling it here? The Moody's rating has downgraded them to a higher risk of default with the speculated increase of costs to manufacture. I guess because Fender is, a big corporation. These I don't really know much about Moody's, but I guess it's just a credit rating for these big corporations, and it's just moving them from B2 to B3, which indicates a higher risk of default. Moody's has also downgraded Fender's probability to default from a B2 PD to a B3 PD, and its senior secured term loan rating from B3 to CAA1. If somebody knows what that means, who's a finance person, feel free to tell us in the comments. And I don't know whether that's,
significant,
consequential, how consequential it is. I don't know. But Guitar World felt it was worth reporting on. Now we know from some of their reporting on, best power supplies and stuff like that, they don't always have it right. So I don't know what this means, but I can just tell you that if there is a 10% increase from where we are right now, you're likely to see your $200 pedals get up to around $214, $215. This is depending on how much they have in parts and all that stuff. And probably your pedals that are more expensive, the Strymons, the stuff like that, that's going to be even more. Now, where you're going to see an even greater price increase is the pedals that maybe are completely made in China, or a greater majority of the parts are made in China, because many companies still have made in USA or assembled in USA, and they can do it legally as long as everything is like the final steps are assembled here. So if I had all the circuit board level stuff, right? Like if I'm showing just like assembled circuit board right here. If I had an assembled circuit board, I could get this sent to me in America. I could put this in an enclosure in America, and I could call this assembled in USA, even if this whole thing was made in China. So if that's the case of the manufacturer, and this isn't a judgment on the manufacturer, this is just a reality of what the business is, this person would be paying even more because they'd be getting a greater part of their product made in China. So the percentage to them is going to be even more consequential. So I think that number can shift. Excuse me, depending on how much their labor costs are relative to their parts cost and how much of the product is being made in China. So I think we're likely to see if the tariffs actually go through and this isn't a scare tactic, that we're likely to see the manufacturers won't be able to absorb all that, and the reality is even on a $50, a pedal that costs $50 to make, that's just the cost. They're not assuming their profit and stuff like that, because there's always people out there that are saying, these guys, I could make that for whatever amount less, and it's just such a silly argument. It's just such a silly argument because you're not running a business. You're just making one. So anyway, Grant, I've been talking a while. Let's I'll take a breath and let you chime in. What are your thoughts and feelings as a Canadian on this? How do the tariffs impact you as a business owner? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a whole bunch of unknown. And I think the tricky part, let's say we were coming off of a pre-pandemic scenario or context, and this was happening where costs go up, raw costs go up $3-4 on a pedal. A lot of companies, myself included, would probably just absorb it because the industry, we're still making good sales. The profit is still built in there. A few extra dollars isn't the end of the world. But that's not the context we're in. We are coming off the back of a very soft couple of years. The industry is down on sales already. People, budgets are just tighter than they were 6 years ago. It's just the reality. People have less discretionary income. And so I know a lot of people have already closed their doors, which is unfortunate, to say the least. And the people that have survived, you and I being two of those, it's like, man, it just feels like in the last few years, it's just hit after hit of, there's just a lot of difficulty on keeping the doors open. It's not the amount of sales we were seeing 6 years ago. So to add tariffs, it's like, oh, we survived the pandemic. We made it. And then to add tariffs in on top of this as well, it's just another kind of hit. And it's tricky. So I would say a lot of companies, this will be the thing that forces them to raise prices if they haven't already. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that affects an already soft market and what that does. I mean, this could be the final nail for some companies. But I think for me in particular, this always sounds impressive, and it's not. It's something I wish I'd changed. We operate out of 3 different countries. That is not because we're huge. It's because of COVID. Started the company in Australia. All of our customers, for the most part, were in America. So we fulfill from America. And then I moved to Canada due to COVID. So I operate out of Canada. Between these 3 locations, we try and help each other out and ship things cross-border if one person's low on stock or whatever. We want to keep fulfilling orders and keep our promises to customers. Now, shipping something across the Canadian-American border is more difficult, or it might be. Again, the pause, tariffs are being paused and reinstated and paused. It's impossible to keep up with right now. So that has been more difficult. So it's forcing us to change. Shipping stuff from China directly to America now is very expensive. I don't know what the tariffs are at as of today, but it's been up to 45%, 10%, 20%. Just again, it's going all over the place. And so if we need to get anything from China, it's like right now, just to be totally honest, I'm at the point where I'm just not ordering certain things. I don't have a replacement manufacturer in America to take over because some of this stuff is so custom that it just can't be. I can't flip a switch and get it made in America. It'll take 6 months to 12 months to fully transition. And so I just have paused on orders, and there's certain things I'm just going to have to leave as out of stock until there's a little bit more certainty. Because my biggest fear is I start a big order of something, and then when I place the order, tariffs are favorable enough to where it makes sense to still order. Let's say 10%. And then 30 to 60 days later, that product is ready to ship, and now tariffs are at 45%. I'm at that point, I'm in between a rock and a hard place. Like, what do I do? I can't just leave it in China for 6 months. I can't ship it, or else I'm going to be selling at a loss, or I have to severely increase my prices, at which point I probably wouldn't have ordered that in the first place. And so it's a huge unknown. And I know there's other companies, other Canadian companies in the music industry that I've kind of chatted to, and it's just really like the overall feeling, not to paint too bleak of a picture, but is really just, what are we going to do? Like, how do we deal with this? And it's just such a huge unknown in that regard. And so, as much as I would love to believe, and this is irregardless of your political position, that's not what we're getting at here. This isn't a Trump is evil and everyone else is the savior type thing. It's just the reality of politics aside. If these tariffs are in place, best case scenario, it forces us to significantly change our business model. Worst case scenario, it's not that simple, and costs have to go up at a time where people don't have the money. For the most part, they just don't have that extra cash to really deal with this. So it's, my overall feeling is, I have to do what I have to do to keep my business moving forward, to get creative. What will I do to approach this from a new perspective? Very much this is a problem that needs to be solved, and how are we going to do that? And so I'm a little wary, also hopeful. I absolutely love what I do for a job. Like, running Goodwood is my dream job. And so it's closing the doors are not an option until it's my only option. But it's a lot of unknowns right now. It's really interesting to see how quickly we can go from, we made it out of COVID and looking forward really positively towards the future, of which I still am. And then it feels like overnight, it's like, oh, I didn't see this coming. Like, what are we going to do about this? And having to kind of deal with this new set of hurdles, of which, if you're a business owner, and Mason, I'm sure you can relate, tariffs are new. Overcoming hurdles and obstacles as a business owner it's just par for the course. And so in one aspect, I feel like this is just another thing, another week. But this obviously is a bit more significant than the normal things that I would have to deal with, potentially more significant. So I think tariffs are tricky. I don't really have any answers for it. I think what a lot of consumers, the people that buy our products, think is it's only, like what you were kind of highlighting, it's only a few dollars. Why does that really matter? But if we get up into the 40, 45, 50% tariffs on a product that costs $50, that takes a $200 pedal, and we're very quickly going up to the $275, $299 retail range. And that's just not really sustainable for anybody. It's not doable. And so, I'll be very curious to see where we're at in 3 to 6 months and where this tariff situation is. Because right now, it's just stopping me from buying stuff. I'm not really, it's not a viable option to move manufacturing on a larger scale to America. Firstly, because a lot of these products, as you know, and we've mentioned many times, you just can't. There's not an option. And then secondly, if the tariffs are being turned on, off, paused, yes, they're happening, no, they're not, it's 10%, no, it's 60%, it's 30%, like everything is in flux. I'm not going to make a big move with this many questions in the air. So for now, it's just slow down for a second and think about this rationally. And right now, it's a little too soon to make any moves, and it's just kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah. Well, Grant, I want to continue to talk about this and some of the effects that that are possible out there. But before we do, I want to talk about a few sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week.
I would love to tell you about the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. If you guys are in the area, definitely go in and check them out. I was actually just on Instagram today. Believe it or not, I go on Instagram most days. And I saw the Guitar Sanctuary posting a guitar clinic. They have a venue there within the building, and they kind of upskill their local customer base, and they get great artists in and just teach you, like, this is how I get this sound. This is how I play this guitar part. And they get some great people in. And so not only are they a music store, but they're also a facility for kind of upskilling and getting some great artists and local talent in as well. And so if you are in McKinney, Texas, definitely check that out. Check out their Instagram to stay up to date. But also, any gear that we talk about on the show, for the most part, you can find at the Guitar Sanctuary. It's very rare that they don't carry something that we chat about on the show. And so you can text them, you can call them, you can obviously go online to theguitarsanctuary.com. And by supporting them, you are supporting this show and making sure that we can keep putting out episodes like the one you're listening to right now. So check them out at theguitarsanctuary.com. I also want to tell you about Neural DSP. We are all fans of the Quad Cortex, the Neural plugins, and everything that they kind of have to offer in hardware and software form at Neural DSP. The Quad Cortex being, if you haven't heard already, a multi-effects amp profiling, amp sim, reorderable, parallel, like it just does it all. And with a recent update, late 2024, you can also start uploading plugins that you have bought from neuraldsp.com directly onto your Quad Cortex. And they are slowly migrating all of those plugins into a format at which you can upload onto your Quad Cortex, which is incredible. So check out neuraldsp.com and you can use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 10 or 30, not 10, 30% off any plugin that is 90 days or older. So 70% away from free at neuraldsp.com for all of their plugins. I also, lastly, want to tell you about D'Addario. They have a new line of products, a 10,000 milliamp hour battery that you can basically wire up your basic analog pedal board, and you don't even need to plug it in with power, because the power is obviously in the battery. And I wanted to test this out. Right behind me, I have this new X-Band kind of pedal power battery kit plugged in behind me to a Maris LVX. And the reason I chose the LVX is it is a thirsty pedal. It takes quite a bit of power to run it. I've been running it for about 90 minutes. I literally pulled this thing out of the box, I didn't even charge it, plugged it into the Maris. It was at 100%. And now about 90 to 100 minutes later, it's at 92%. It's actually doing a very good job. And so there's a lot of power built in there. Obviously, you know, D'Addario for their strings and their accessories, straps, capos, all of that is available as well. And then they also have a daisy chain that is movable. You can adjust the length. So you don't have a daisy chain that has 6 extra inches of cable to go to the pedal right next to it, or is just shy. You can actually adjust this daisy chain without resoldering. You just unscrew the tap, move it down, and rescrew it in, and it's good to go. So for pedals that can share power nicely, this is a great solution. And then they have some other accessories as well that go with this kit for pedals that need isolated power. So isolation type boxes which galvanically isolate from the previous pedal in the chain. Lots of cool ideas here. Great accessories. And if you want to take advantage of the 15% off strings and accessories for your first order of $75 or more, go to D'Addario.com/chairman. And then you just want to make sure you are logged into the Players Circle reward program, and you will be able to take advantage of 15% off of strings and accessories. So check it out, D'Addario.com/chairman. All the details are below in the show notes, and you can clarify anything there as well. Really excited to be testing this stuff out, and it's pretty cool to be able to just move this thing around wherever I need it without having to plug it into the wall. So those are our first sponsors here that make the show possible. And again, just want to remind you, by supporting these guys, you are supporting Chairman of the Boards directly and making these episodes possible. I'll throw it back to you, Mason.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Grant. And D'Addario sounds like, I'm a big believer in their strings. I haven't messed around with the power supplies, but I could see it being a good thing for, and you got some sort of emergency thing you need to power up, or testing pedals and stuff like that. Sometimes having to go back to the wall is kind of a pain.
Yeah.
I used to keep one of those battery 9-volt battery clips that the Voodoo Lab would provide, and I would cut them down and change it so that I could use it as an input on a normal pedal. So I just have like a little battery hanging off, and I could power.
That's
pedals
a good idea.
Test stuff. But getting back to the tariffs thing, I think as you've said, there's a ton of unknowns. I think that consumers should be ready to see price increases across the board. I just don't think that if this is the direction that we're going, I just don't see how manufacturers are going to be able to absorb it. I just think it's going to be all of your $200 pedals are going to be the $215 to $219 range
at best, if not more.
And yeah, and there's going to be a reset. There was a slower, I think, price reset in kind of like the early 2000s, where kind of like what maybe was formerly like $150 pedals kind of became $200 pedals, and a lot of Boss pedals went from being maybe $99 to $150. And I wonder if we're kind of in one of those moments, and I think even we see this in different industries. Like, I can't remember when I noticed this, but like, I feel like a Honda Accord is like $50,000 now.
Yeah, cars are not cheap anymore.
And I kind of remember, like, I don't know, like a Honda Accord being like, oh, you could get like a base model for like around $20,000. Like now it's Honda Accord's like $50,000, or a Toyota Camry is like $50,000. And I was like, wow, like when I was a kid, $50,000 you could get like a BMW or something like that.
A real nice car.
I don't know anything about BMWs, but I kind of just like equated like, $50,000 you get like a Mercedes or like a BMW. So that's kind of like, having to reset our expectations around what things cost. Things cost more, and I understand that people's paychecks maybe haven't been commensurate with that, and that's really frustrating to feel like the gear that you kind of had planned on buying or were aspiring to buy is now kind of even a little further out of reach than maybe it already was. I also am really curious how this is going to affect used prices, because right now, I think there's still a lot of stuff on the marketplace that's on the used marketplace, I should say. Excuse me. As a consequence of just sort of like some of the crazed buying habits that occurred during the pandemic, and where you saw a lot of inventory, a lot of purchasing, and then a lot of liquidation when kind of things were coming out of the pandemic and people had too much stuff, or manufacturers, I should say, had too much stuff. And then they would sort of liquidate those. And then a lot of the stuff ends up on the used market. And I think right now there's like a really interesting discrepancy between the used prices and availability versus where new guitar prices are going, and that margin is seems to be widening and has the potential to widen even further than it is. I'm really curious if that too will have an effect on people buying new gear, because they're like, wow, like there's now, instead of a 30% difference, in new versus used. There's a 50% difference in new versus used, which is going to kind of push more people into the idea that they would be buying a secondhand guitar or amplifier or pedal or whatever it is, because their savings is so much greater. And there's like no longer incentive, or there's less of an incentive to pay 20% more for a pedal to help pad whatever the tariffs are. What do you think?
I do think in a few years, because I think right now, and maybe even more so last year, we did have a huge amount of people purchasing during COVID. So after they purchased during COVID, the used market was a little more flooded than it was. So supply outstripped demand. Prices went down. I think that in a few years, when that huge kind of bubble is a little bit further behind us, the used market will then catch up. I mean, we are going to feel the effects of people buying less last year and even into this year in the used market. Probably in a year or two's time, people are going to be selling less gear because they purchased less gear however long previous to that. So I feel like the used market prices, and again, I am no expert here, so I'm just thinking out loud. I feel like the used market prices will slowly start to follow. Let's say we have a 10 to 20% price increase on new gear in the next 6 months. I think the used market will trail, but slowly follow it as the supply has slowed down potentially on the used market, just because of the softer market we're currently experiencing. I mean, who knows? I could be way off. It could be exactly the opposite. But I have a feeling if the supply is lower than demand on the used market, we'll see the prices go up. And you could logically come to that. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. You could logically come to that conclusion that may happen over the next year or so. But at the same time, I mean, if prices are still going up everywhere else, so groceries are more expensive, cars are more expensive, like if all of that is still happening as well, then the demand for even used gear might stay quite low. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I know I'm buying less gear now than I ever have. And I'm also a manufacturer of guitar gear. Like I'm in the industry every day, like literally every day I am talking gear, looking at gear. And so if anyone's going to buy something, it's probably going to be me. And even now I'm like, do I really need that? Whereas before, like, yeah, that's awesome. I'll just sell it if I don't end up using it. It's not a big issue. But now I'm questioning, will I be able to sell it on the used market? Is there actually going to be a buyer for me? And so everything is kind of, I'm a little slower to act than I once was with this stuff, where it was a bit of a safer space to exchange, buy, sell, move things along. And so I know I've had a couple things up for sale in the past little while, and some of it just didn't move. I had it up for 8 weeks. I had it at a really good price and no one bought it. And so it's just everything is kind of, it feels like a different market. And so if it's a correction, so be it. I would love to get back to the place, even if it's at slightly higher prices, I would love to get back to the place where people just seem to enjoy moving gear around, not even on the new market, just, I tried this for a bit. I put it back up for sale. Someone bought it. That gave me money to try out a new used piece of gear. And then I sold that. But right now it just seems like everything is so much slower, even just talking on the used side. I don't know what it's like in your area, but up here in Vancouver, in Canada, everything just feels like it's moving way slower at a glacial pace than what it was a little while ago. And so it's hard to know that the gear I have is actually worth something. It's only worth something if someone's willing to pay for it. If someone's not willing to buy it, it's worth something to you, but if you can't sell it, it's not liquid. It doesn't represent cash.
Right.
And so that's the tricky part in my mind is we need to get back to a spot where even, regardless of what the price point is, but people are actually willing to spend money on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say here the used market seems to be, again, I don't claim to have my finger fully on the pulse of everything that's going on, but you know that we have a brunch group of Bay Area musicians, manufacturers, guitar technicians, and it's kind of an interesting cross section because you're sort of hearing it from different perspectives in the industry. From kind of the generalized point of view, if I'm to summarize, they definitely are still buying and selling gear, but it may be a consequence of the fact that there are a lot of pre-existing used gear marketplaces that are sort of baked into the infrastructure of California, excuse me. Ooh, you got me good. Those little kids, they got me good. So I think that they're saying that things work pretty well. Things are selling.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Particularly well. Excuse me. And I think Craigslist, because it's so huge here, like I know when I go to other states and I search on a Craigslist ad, just because I was sort of thinking it's going to look like it does in, LA or the Bay Area. Even big cities are not quite like they are here. Like you can find most amps, most vintage Fender amps, excuse me, available. Like I could type in Bassman and probably find 2 to 3 examples of a mid-60s Bassman or deluxe reverb and at least find a silver face, if not a black panel. I could type in Princeton like I could find pretty much everything. Now, it doesn't mean the pricing is going to be great, but I can find everything. And so I think that's a huge help if you're looking for something, especially in the vintage market. Now, I'd say vintage guitar is less good at that, but certainly custom shops, certainly American standards, whether you're talking about the Strats, Les Pauls, all the kind of major food groups. I would say that the pricing is pretty self-correcting because if somebody's too high, then they're just going to wait on it. And if somebody's motivated to move, then they're going to lower the price, or they're going to accept a lower offer that's below what their asking price is. I just think that as the starting prices of these items go up, the expectations as far as what the consumer will pay used is also going up. Like like maybe they're still selling it for 40% less, but the prices have gone up, 30% in the last 5 years. So like what was formerly getting you a Strat, let's say, when you used to be able to get an American vintage reissue Strat for, 1,000 to 1,200, now it's, 14 to 1,600. Or if you used to be able to get a custom shop for 2,000 to 2,200, it's now 26 to 2,800. And so I just think that the floor is just been raised. Like there may still be those gaps, but the days are gone where you could get a custom shop Les Paul. Like I remember buying an R7 gold top on Craigslist. I want to say for 2,400.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can find a custom shop gold top R7 on Craigslist for that now.
Yeah.
I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
Or very rarely would exist, or it'd be some messed up color like Gecko Burst, or something weird. Which is like the most hysterical. Like I have a Gecko Burst story in me. If you want to hear it real quick.
I do. I don't think I've ever heard that term. I'm not a huge Gibson guy, so I kind of want to look up a Gecko Burst guitar while you're chatting.
Gabriel, when you're editing this, if you could throw up a photo right now of a Gibson Les Paul standard, just American standard in Gecko Burst. I really wanted a Les Paul when I was in high school, and because I had a Strat already, and I was searching Craigslist. This is in the early I guess it was mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s, And I was like, man, I really want this Gecko. I really want a Les Paul. And I wanted a Les Paul standard. There was kind of a version below it called the Les Paul Classic, which is kind of like it was still kind of like a Les Paul standard, but it was kind of more stripped down. And it had like an engraved pick guard that said like 1950s or 1960s on it. And it had these aged trapezoid inlays. And it kind of looked like a Les Paul, like a real Les Paul, but there's things about it that just look cheap to me. And I was like, I think I should just get a standard. I was looking around forever, and I found that there was just always this like Gecko Burst Les Paul that would always be listed for like a year, and nobody wanted it because it was like the most hideous color. But it was a Les Paul standard. It's Gecko Burst top, and had a natural back. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to buy that guitar. Like, I'll make this guy an offer for like $800. I'll get a Les Paul standard, and it'll look bad, but I'll have a Les Paul standard.
Yep.
You know, it's like, you know, somebody who's like, man, I really want like, you know, fill in the blank exotic car, and you can get it for the price of a Honda Accord,
but it only comes in purple.
It's going to be this, or something really bizarre, right? And so I remember like, yeah, like it was fine. It played fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It just was Gecko Burst, you know, and it was kind of this weird color. And after having it for a few months, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I don't feel like in good conscience I can like play this in public. It's just like, it's like too embarrassing, you know, like it's not a Cherry Sunburst or something standard. And weirdly enough, it was the only time that I found somebody who loved Gecko Burst.
Oh, beautiful.
There's a studio owner at this recording studio called Prairie Sun. And the owner of its name is Muka. And I put it up for sale, and I think he paid $1,200 for it. So like I made $400 by selling it to him. And $1,200 at that time was maybe kind of the middle to low end of a Les Paul standard in like a desirable color. But to Muka, that was like the most desirable color.
He got a deal.
And apparently he had a penchant for these weird kind of like colors. Like he was like an Antigua Burst Strat guy. He was like into those sort of bizarre colors that most people don't like, but he loved. So bless his heart, he bought one, and then I could buy an actual Les Paul standard in a color that was, you know, honey burst or something like that. You know?
Yep.
But I just thought, you know, that's my Gecko Burst story.
I love it.
So, and maybe there's somebody out there, if you love Gecko Burst, tell us in the comments. I want to hear about your
some
Gecko
other
Burst
odd
story.
finish that isn't common.
I feel like the new CEO of Gibson is into like weird colors like that. Like I know he likes the silver burst stuff. This is Cesar. He's into these weird colors, so maybe he might be a Gecko Burst guy.
Maybe we'll see a big resurgence in the new product lines.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I mean, I feel like when it comes to guitars, I just want classic. Even on a Strat, like on a Strat, in a Tobacco Burst, something like that, or even just plain black with a white pickguard. I'm all about it. I think that's great. Yeah. But I don't go wild or crazy on any sort of guitar finish. I just can't do it. Like the thing that comes to mind right now, if I could purchase a guitar right now without even thinking about it, I'm just on like a bit of an SG kick right now. It would just be a red SG, maybe with a Bigsby on it. I wouldn't want anything on it to stand out or be flashy. I just want the classic look, and that's it. But I couldn't do anything bright or over the top.
Just like Angus Young.
Well, I mean, if I could be anyone, I don't have the legs for it, but I would probably, I'd probably want to do that. Yeah, Angus Young. And
you don't feel like a worship service wearing some suspenders and shorts? And
I do all the time.
Oh, yeah. You do? Okay.
Oh yeah. I haven't done it yet. I don't have the courage to really commit. You know. So underneath my plain black jeans and my black shirt, you better believe I'm wearing suspenders, flannel, short shorts. I'm Angus Younging all the way home into my solo Dallas pedal. But on top of that, I'm modest, covered, and classic.
Awesome. Well, with that, I want to talk about another few sponsors that make the podcast possible. every single week, and that's our friends over at Bestronics. And Brad at Bestronics, I think, is not only just a Rolodex of all sorts of part numbers for anything that you might need, but is the foremost supplier, I would say, to the world's pedalboard manufacturers and builders of parts, cables, accessories, all things that you will need in order to build the pedalboard of your dreams is housed under one roof in Tinley Park, a suburb of Chicago, Illinois. Fast shipping, amazing service. And if there's anything that you don't see, just email them and Brad can help you locate the thing that you will need. Whether it's 2.1 millimeter barrel connectors, TRS plugs, specialty cables, they have it all. Check them out over at btpa.com. Use the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and get 10% off your order. Tell them the chairman sent you. Also, for our Canadian brethren, we have a new sponsor who's just joined us in the last few weeks, BG Music and Sound.
GB.
And they are GB Music and Sound, and they are located in the Alberta area. What city are they in?
Red Deer.
They're not in Red Deer.
Yes.
And man, do they have some amazing gear. When you're looking through their website, I didn't know that so many boutique amps could be housed under one shop in Canada. In fact, I think they've got to be one of the few that have all these different options under one roof for you to check out. Certainly the only ones in Alberta. If you're in that area, head over and check them out. There's a link in the description if you want to check out their website. If you buy anything from them, they give us a little dividend, a little kickback in return. So if you're based in Alberta, you're in the area for some reason, go over, check them out, buy a little something, go on the website, order something, have them send it to you. And that in turn helps us over at the show. All the links for our direct link to get credit for sending you there are in the description and in the show notes. All right, Grant. So final thoughts on the tariff thing. If you were kind of guessing what we're going to be looking at, let's say 90 days from now, what is sort of your prediction of where this is going?
Oh, I think it's a prediction.
Let's see, what's your prediction
what I'm hoping.
And what's your hope?
Yes,
what's your prediction and what's your hope?
My prediction, man, the Canada-Mexico tariffs will no longer be in effect. China will have a 10% tariff rather than whatever we're at, 45% right now. That's my prediction. My hope, not really understanding the ramifications of my hope, this is probably more of a selfish one, is that the tariffs are just gone and that we can get back to focusing on our businesses rather than how we're going to address tariffs and all that type of stuff in and amongst everything else. So my hope is that they go away. But again, I'm no economist. I don't really understand what that means. But for my business, it would sure simplify things. What about you?
Yeah.
Prediction / hope.
My prediction is that there's going to be some version of a tariff in place, I think, across the board. I feel like the tenor of the any sort of assertion that's been made just historically, like if we're looking at the first term of Donald Trump and then the current term, I think usually he's pretty, like, I don't think he usually backs down off of something that he said that is going to happen. Or it's rare that happens. So I think that there has to be some form of tariff that goes into place. From an optic standpoint, if anything, and that maybe gets rolled back slowly on the back end so that it doesn't have as much of a public facing sort of obvious change. My hope, though, is that the economic consequences or the business outcry is such where it makes it so unfavorable that they have to roll it back, in I guess, do it in a way that saves face. But the interesting thing to me is that, surrounded by a lot of these business leaders, Elon Musk and people like that, I would think that things like the Chinese tariffs would affect them. Presumably a lot of Tesla's stuff comes from China, as far as at least the materials, if not some of the parts and some of the stuff that gets built that then maybe gets assembled here in the US. But there's a lot of business leaders around him that are in manufacturing. And so, I wonder whether their opinion matters on this, or maybe the way that the outline of the tariffs are done doesn't affect their products. And I know that there's been conversations around sort of certain products being more affected than others.
Yep.
So maybe elements of consumer electronics are not going to be harmed by that, but certain products will. I don't know how that division works, but my thought is that we're likely going to see price increases. And this isn't to sound dismissive of sort of the impact of this, but in some ways I feel like it's kind of been a long time coming, like not necessarily the tariffs, but like people have kind of locked in that $199 pedal is kind of being the standard price for a boutique pedal for a long time. And like, is it realistic that like everything is going to stay the same? Like, whose rent is the same from the same place that it was 10 years ago, or whose, is gas the same price that it was 10 years ago? Like, there's all these things that sort of eventually get more expensive, over time. And it's just kind of been how things are. And I know that we get used to things costing a certain amount, and it seems more difficult. And like, I just wonder, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to make more money from the same product than I already was, but if it ends up having to cost $5 to $10 more to make the same product, there's a threshold, as Grant said, where you can't just eat it anymore. Because it's not like when you're selling something for $200 that we're absorbing all that profit. As I mentioned, you're selling that for 30 to 50% less than you would the actual market price. And then maybe within that, there's somewhere between a $50 to $80 profit. But that has to pay for all the things that make your business run. And I would say for most companies, it's less $80 on the $200 pedal and probably closer to the $50 range. And that's probably on the average of all the stuff that they sell. And if that margin starts getting chipped away, it's not like their expenses are getting less. Insurance is getting more, payroll taxes, typically, are pretty substantial insurance for your company. It's probably going up every single year, to a little bit of a degree.
It all adds up very quickly.
Utility costs, all that stuff goes up. So it's like, it's not like our expenses are getting less, and so like there's again a threshold for how much the company can absorb before they do that. But I think if we weren't there already, I think that this is maybe going to force some of those companies. And I wonder too, like, I think it's easier to have like a $199 pedal and make it, $214 or $219. I think $219 from the kind of the consumer perspective is roughly the same thing. Like, I think that there's like some price breaks where like you're leaving money on the table by not just making it $219 instead of $214. I forget what they are. I have it somewhere, but there's a whole like consumer psychology thing about pricing. But I think the one where it's going to really hurt is like on those like $99 pedals, like those GHS $99 pedals where there's like no margin at all.
Yeah.
And like
you can't take another 10% hit.
Yeah, like those just don't have margin for that, and he's got to be getting these components from China. And it's just, I don't know how you would do it. I don't know how like those products in particular, where like the part of the whole marketing is that they're under $100.
Which is another way of saying is that the margins are paper thin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing, because we did an episode, what was it, maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago now, on the $99 pedals, being JHS, Walrus, and Keeley has a kind of a line there now as well. And that was my first thought when we were starting today. I was like, I wonder what these guys are going to do. Like, how long can you keep that $99 pedal before you're actually losing money to make them? and they must be getting close. It has to be right around the corner. And so I don't want to see that go. I love that they're doing it. I think only a company of a certain size can do that. I couldn't do it. No. And so I want that to stay. But at the same time, I also want these companies to be healthy and sticking around for the long term as well. So we'll have to see how that plays out. If this now turns into a 109.99 pedal, a sub 110, sub 120, like how far do we go here? So hoping for the best.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we'll do a follow-up episode on this. And again, if somebody knows what all these credit ratings are for Fender and all that stuff, or can shed some light on what they actually mean in terms of kind of the laid person's perspective. I make no claims to be a finance expert, so it would be interesting for somebody to shed some light on that in the comments if they understand it better than we do. But Grant, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I hope that we're still able to get our maple syrup here at a reasonable rate. Yeah.
Liquid gold, as they call it up here.
Yep. Just put a straw in a shot glass and
that's breakfast.
Suck it down. Yep. So I hope we come out of it unscathed, but preparing for what might be some price increases. And I hope that everybody on the consumer side understands, that we're not trying to make it worse for you. It's just the reality of the landscape at this point in time.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, great chatting, Mason.
All right, Grant. All right. Well, until next week, we'll see you guys later. Be sure to check out the Facebook page if you want to engage more conversations about pedals, pedal boards. You got questions for us about your signal path, etc. It's a really cool community. We've been gaining a lot of new traction, a lot of new people that are joining. It's all free to join, easy to join. So head over to Facebook to check that out. We've got a link in our show notes and in the description if you want to join us. Also, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.